I wasn't snooping. Let me just get that out of the way first. Her phone was sitting there on the kitchen counter. Screen lit up with a buzz that pulled my attention in like gravity. I was just grabbing a glass of water, not digging for anything, not looking for a fight. But I looked. I read the message. And in an instant, my whole body tensed. Slip B17. Same as last time. Waiting. That's it. No emojis. No punctuation. No name. But the moment I read it, I stopped breathing. Slip B17. I knew where that was. Hell, I'd moored my client's yacht there before. Back when the firm was celebrating our quarterly win. It's not just a boat slip. It's one of those private luxury berths at the marina downtown. The kind of place you have to reserve ahead of time. The kind of place people go when they don't want to be seen. I stared at the message for a few seconds longer than I probably should have. Enough time to memorize it. Enough time to feel something crawling up the back of my neck. Not anger, not even jealousy, just dread. And then I heard footsteps. I stepped away just as Olivia walked in. She was wearing that soft white sweater she always put on when she wanted to look effortlessly cozy. Her hair was pinned up, a few strands falling along her cheek. She smiled when she saw me, that same smile I used to look forward to every day. Now, it just made me feel like I was watching a stranger wear her face. I tried to keep my voice light. Hey, Liv, who's messaging you about a boat slip? I kept my back turned as I opened the fridge. I could feel her eyes on me. Pause barely half a second, but long enough. Then she laughed, soft and airy. Oh, that? She said, brushing it off with a wave of her hand like she was swatting a gnat. That's just Rachel from yoga. They're organizing this little weekend thing, paddle boarding, maybe even a meditation circle on a boat. She probably sent it to the wrong person. You know how she is. She smiled again, that performative kind of amused smile people wear when they want you to know they're not taking something seriously. But it didn't reach her eyes. I looked at her for a long moment, trying to read between the words, behind the calm. She looked unbothered, comfortable, not even a hint of guilt in her expression. If I hadn't seen the message myself, I might have believed her. But I had, and now I couldn't unsee it. Rachel? I repeated slowly, keeping my tone neutral. Yeah, she mixes things up all the time. Olivia continued, still breezy. She probably meant to text Marissa. They were talking about slip numbers yesterday during class. I'll tell her she sent it to the wrong person. I nodded. Right, that makes sense. But it didn't. Not even a little. Rachel wasn't the type to organize things. Marissa didn't even own a swimsuit. I knew that because Olivia once told me she hated the ocean. And more than anything, I knew Olivia. Or at least I thought I did. She went right back to her tablet, scrolling through Pinterest or Instagram or whatever she'd been looking at before, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just spun out a lie so smooth and casual it almost fooled me. Almost. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't start with a confession, or a scream, or even a dramatic moment under dim lighting. It starts with something tiny. A text, a glance, a weird hesitation. It starts with your wife laughing off a message about a yacht berth, and you nodding, pretending to believe her, while inside your mind starts unraveling. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after that, pretending to read something on my phone, listening to the sound of Olivia flipping through pages or scrolling or texting again. I couldn't tell anymore. My heart was beating slow and heavy, like it had sunk to the bottom of my stomach. I wanted to ask her again, push, confront, but I didn't. Something held me back. Maybe it was self-preservation, maybe it was fear, or maybe I just wasn't ready to know. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water and walked back to the den. Sat in my leather chair, the one that still smelled faintly like cedar and aftershave. I opened my laptop and stared at the home screen for 10 minutes before I remembered what I was supposed to be working on. Numbers, graphs, projections, but none of it made sense anymore. My brain kept going back to that message. Slip B17. Same as last time. Waiting. Same as last time. That's the part that wouldn't let go. That line suggested familiarity, repetition, pattern. This wasn't a first-time thing. This wasn't someone inviting her to a yoga retreat. This was someone she'd seen before, at that exact location. And they were waiting again. I closed the laptop without saving anything and leaned back in the chair. For a moment, I just stared at the ceiling. How long had I missed it? The signs? The late planning sessions? The new clothes that had been in her closet forever, but still had creases at the collar? The sudden obsession with her phone, which never used to leave her purse. The way she sometimes smelled like a different cologne. Not hers, not mine. Subtle, like she tried to cover it with body spray, but it clung anyway. Or the time she came home flustered after saying she had a meeting with a supplier, only to later say it was a consultant. When I asked which one, she changed the subject. And how she never used to be secretive with her phone, until she started putting it on Do Not Disturb at dinner. Until she started locking it. It wasn't just the message. It was everything. Everything added up. And the total? Something I couldn't ignore anymore. That night I barely slept. I lay in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling while she breathed soft and steady, like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't lied to me earlier that evening. Like she wasn't meeting someone in secret. Someone who had their own yacht, their own slip, their own version of her. I kept replaying it in my mind. The message, her face, the shrug, the laugh, and my own reaction. Calm, quiet, polite. It made me feel sick. But what could I do? I had no proof. Just a text and a gut feeling, and gut feelings don't hold up in court. Or therapy. Or divorce proceedings. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it. Cry maybe. Tell me I was paranoid. Turn it into a trust issue. Daniel, you've been working so hard lately. Maybe you're stressed, kind of deflection. No, I needed more. And more importantly, I needed to be smart. Because if what I suspected was true, this wasn't just about infidelity. This was about who she really was when I wasn't looking. About the cracks in our life that I'd either ignored or patched up with work and wine and quiet avoidance. This wasn't just about a message. It was about the beginning of the end, and whether I had the courage to follow the trail. The next morning, she made coffee like usual. French press. A little cinnamon. My favorite mug. She kissed me on the cheek and asked about my Thursday meetings. I smiled, told her everything was on track. And somewhere inside me, a switch flipped. I was done asking questions. I was going to get answers. You'd be surprised how quickly suspicion becomes a full-time job. It starts with one text. Then it's every late night, every outfit, every scent that doesn't belong. Suddenly you're noticing things you never paid attention to before. You go from being a husband to being, what? A detective? A shadow? A ghost in your own house? After that morning, the one with the French press and the kiss and the lie, I started paying attention. I mean, really paying attention. I wasn't looking for drama or confrontation. I just wanted clarity. Truth. Something solid. Because I felt like I was losing my grip on what was real in my own life. The first thing I did was simple. I checked our shared ride receipts. Most couples don't even think about it. But we'd linked our Uber accounts years ago for convenience. She probably forgot. That week alone, I found 3 late-night rides to the harbor. One of them dropped her off near the exact coordinates of slip B17. I looked it up. It wasn't even disguised. Just sitting there in our ride history like it wasn't the most damning thing in the world. I stared at that screen for a long time. My throat felt dry. It's one thing to feel like something's off. It's another to see cold, hard evidence that your wife has been going someplace she has no reason to be. Alone, repeatedly, and lying about it. The next ride was to Oceanic, a boutique store 2 blocks from the marina. She told me she was at a supplier meeting that night. She wasn't. I could have confronted her right then. Slammed the phone on the table, demanded answers. But what would that do? She'd spin it again. Say she was meeting a friend. Say it was yoga-related. There'd be a perfectly polished lie waiting on her tongue, soft and believable. I needed more, so I started writing things down. Not in a notebook, too risky. Just a spreadsheet on my work laptop, disguised under a boring file name. Quarterly projections Q4 archive. If she saw it, she'd never open it. Too dull. Too long. Perfect. I logged every planning session, every taxi drop-off, every cent that didn't belong to either of us. One night, she came home wearing a dress I'd never seen. Pale blue, off-shoulder. She said she'd pulled it from the back of the closet. I remembered that dress. Not because she wore it, but because I saw it earlier that day, hanging in a Nordstrom bag in the trunk of her car. She hadn't even bothered to take off the price tag, just tucked it under the seam. That's when I realized I was dealing with someone who wasn't slipping up. She was confident, calculated. There was no guilt in her voice when she told me she was staying late at the office. No hesitation when she said she needed to run a few quick errands on a Sunday afternoon and came back smelling like cigar smoke and Tom Ford Noir. No flicker of shame when she showed me pictures from the fundraiser. Photos she wasn't even in. She was building a narrative and I was supposed to follow the script. But I was off book now, and I needed someone else who could see it from the outside. That's when I called Barry. Barry had been a cop, homicide actually, before he left the force and went into private security. Now he ran a discreet investigations firm. Not cheap, but the best. I met him 5 years ago at a corporate retreat and kept his card, mostly out of respect. Never thought I'd actually use it. When I called, he picked up on the third ring. Barry Schilling. Hey, it's Daniel Brooks. From the Phoenix Ridge Conference 2018. A pause. Then, Seattle guy, right? What can I do for you? I hesitated. Saying the words out loud made it feel more real, more final. I think my wife is cheating on me, I said. He didn't rush, didn't offer false sympathy. Just said, okay, you want surveillance or just confirmation? Both. I'll need photos, known locations, her routine, any recurring names. I already had a folder ready. I'd spent the weekend compiling every detail I could. Her usual schedule, common alibis, names of friends, her social calendar. Every recurring location. Every time she said the word yoga or fundraiser, I traced it. I sent it all to Barry. Give me a week, he said. Maybe less. That week was excruciating. Olivia acted like nothing was wrong. She laughed at my jokes, kissed me goodbye in the mornings, asked me about my clients. Meanwhile, I knew. She was planning her next rendezvous. She had a charity mixer Thursday night. Wore a black satin dress with silver heels. Said she might stay late if the board was networking afterward. I smiled. Told her to have a good time. She smiled back. Eyes soft, lips glossy, her scent unfamiliar. And then she was gone. I sat on the edge of the bed for almost an hour, just staring at the carpet. At 1:17 a.m., she came back home. Quiet, careful. I didn't get up. I just lay there, eyes closed, letting her think she was safe, that her little story held. The next morning, Barry called. I've got confirmation, he said. My throat tightened. Go on. He didn't waste words. She's been meeting a guy. Name's Mason Reed. Real estate developer. Mid-40s. Owns a yacht called North Star, docked at the harbor. Slip B-17. I've got photos of them boarding the boat. Night surveillance confirms they were there for 4 hours, returned late, and left in separate rides. My head spun. Mason Reed. I knew the name. He was on the cover of Seattle Business last year. Flashy, charming, the kind of guy who made his money during the 2012 condo boom and never stopped bragging about it. He married? I asked. Yep. Wife's name is Natalie. 2 kids. Lives in Queen Anne. I gritted my teeth. Keep going. Barry sighed like he'd done this 100 times because he had. We tailed her again 2 nights later. Same pattern. She met him at the Fairmont Olympic. Private suite, keycard entry. Photos of them leaving together. Holding hands. I've got timestamps, facial sh*TS, even video. They weren't careful. I closed my eyes. Anything else? There's a pattern, Barry said. I went back through his financials. Mason's got issues. Big ones. Looks like he's bleeding money, transferring funds between shell LLCs. Shady deals. I'd say your wife's not just involved in an affair. She's sleeping with a sinking ship. A chill ran through me. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about risk. It was about the man who'd not only destroyed my marriage, but might also be hiding a fraud. Send me everything, I said. It'll be in your inbox within the hour. Discreet folder. Encrypted. Let me know if you want to take legal action. I hung up and stared at the blank wall across from my desk. The marriage was over. That much was clear. But something else had clicked into place. Mason had made this personal. He didn't just take my wife. He'd involved her in something toxic. And if he thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd go down like some clueless husband, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I wasn't going to confront Olivia. Not yet. No, I was going to be smarter than that. I was going to take this information and drop it in the one place it would matter most. Right into the hands of the other person Mason had lied to. His wife, Natalie. I waited 3 days before reaching out to Natalie Reed. Not because I wasn't ready. I'd been ready since the moment I saw the photos, but because something about this had to be handled with care. Couldn't be rage. Couldn't be impulsive. It had to be precision. Barry helped me draft the message. Simple. Direct. Hi Natalie. We don't know each other, but we should talk. It's about your husband and mine. You deserve to know what's going on. I attached a single photo. Olivia and Mason, hand in hand outside the Fairmont. Time-stamped, clear, undeniable. No caption, no threats, just the truth. She responded within an hour. Tell me where. We met at a cafe in Fremont, the kind of place with minimalist decor and exposed brick walls. Somewhere neutral, quiet. I got there early, sat in the back corner booth. Ordered black coffee and waited. Natalie walked in wearing a gray coat and sunglasses. Even though it was cloudy, she looked polished, the kind of woman who could silence a room without trying. She spotted me immediately and came over. Daniel, she said quietly, sliding into the booth. I nodded. Natalie. She took off her glasses. Her eyes were glassy, but not red. Not broken. Just processing. You have more? She asked. I slid the envelope across the table. She opened it slowly. Inside were a dozen photos, the yacht, the hotel, a boutique where they shopped together, the receipts. Her fingers trembled as she turned each one. Then she stopped, staring at a picture of Olivia in a red dress I didn't recognize. She was leaning against Mason's shoulder, laughing. His hand rested on her lower back like it belonged there. Natalie closed the envelope. How long? She asked. 7 months, I said. That's as far back as we've tracked. She didn't cry. She didn't swear. She just let out a breath. Long and deep, like she'd been holding it for years. I knew, she whispered. Not about her, but I knew. I didn't say anything. I just let her sit with it. After a moment, she looked up. So what now? You planning to expose them? I nodded. Eventually, but not out of vengeance. There's more. Mason's not just cheating. He's covering up something bigger. Barry's team found evidence of fraud. Real estate money disappearing, cooked books, investor reports doctored. If he goes down, Olivia goes with him. I think she's complicit. Natalie blinked, stunned. My God. I leaned forward. I'm not asking you to be part of this. But if you want to help, it can be clean. Strategic. We bring this to the right people. Let them implode. She didn't answer right away. Then she smiled, tight, cold, and beautiful in the most terrifying way. Oh, I'm in, she said. The dynamic shifted after that. Olivia didn't know it yet, but the countdown had started. She sensed something though. One night, she asked me why I was being so still. That was the word she used, not cold or distant. Still, like she could feel the storm building behind my eyes. I just smiled and kissed her cheek. Just tired. She tilted her head, studied me. Everything okay? Of course, I said. She looked unconvinced but didn't push. The next day, Barry called. Mason's guy made contact. I stiffened. What do you mean? Someone from his inner circle. Driver? Bodyguard? Not sure. He came by your office while you were out. Left an envelope. Cash. 10 grand. Neat stacks. No note. I felt my stomach turn. Bribe. Looks like it. Warning too, maybe. But don't worry, we've documented it. Photographed everything. I laughed bitterly. He thinks I'm for sale. Barry's voice turned sharp. Listen, Daniel, if you want to walk away now, I'll understand. This is about to get serious. I looked out my window at the Seattle skyline, the water gleaming in the distance. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm just getting started. That night I came home early. Olivia was in the kitchen drinking wine. She smiled when she saw me, her expression a little guarded, like she wasn't sure which version of me she was getting. I poured myself a glass and leaned against the counter. Slip B17, I said casually. She froze, just for a second. But it was enough. What? Slip B17, I repeated, sipping my wine. The yacht berth. Remember? You said Rachel texted you about it by mistake. Her face drained of color. Daniel, it's funny, I said, walking toward her, because I found receipts, Uber logs. You've been going down to the marina a lot. Sometimes after yoga. Sometimes after fundraisers. Sometimes when you said you were home late because of a planning session. You remember those? She didn't speak. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I know, Olivia. I know everything. Her hand tightened around the wine glass. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I raised an eyebrow. Like what? She looked at me, eyes glossy now. I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. I didn't plan it. I leaned back against the counter. You mean the same way you didn't plan to lie to me? Or spend nights in a hotel with a married man? That kind of just happened? She wiped her cheek. Mason said he was leaving her. I believed him. I laughed softly. Of course you did. And now what? You're hoping I'll forgive you? Start over? She shook her head slowly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed you to know it wasn't just S*X. My stomach turned. But you're done now? I asked. She hesitated. Then, I don't know. That answer was all I needed. 2 days later, the night of the charity dinner arrived. It was a black tie event at the Museum of Pop Culture MOPOP. Mason was being honored for his outstanding contributions to the city's housing development. Olivia got ready like nothing was wrong. Black dress, silver earrings. She asked if I was coming. I said yes. She smiled, surprised. She thought maybe I was trying to salvage what was left. I wasn't. Barry's team had been busy. The SEC had been tipped. Journalists too. Natalie handled the financial documents. She'd found more than I expected. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Fake contracts. It was a spider web of lies. Everything was set. We arrived late. The place was packed. Olivia beamed, shaking hands, sipping champagne, smiling at ghosts. Mason was across the room, holding court, soaking in praise from people who didn't know they were seconds away from watching him collapse. Then the lights dimmed. A screen came down. Everyone expected a tribute video. Instead, the first image appeared, a still of Mason and Olivia on the yacht. Gasps, whispers. Then a video clip them at the hotel entrance. Then spreadsheets, emails, financial charts, wire transfer confirmations, and then flashing lights. The SEC agents moved in. One of them approached Mason. He didn't resist, just stared at the screen, jaw slack, as the handcuffs clicked into place. Olivia turned to me, eyes wide with horror. What did you do? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned to Natalie, who stood beside me in a stunning navy dress. I offered my arm. She took it, and we walked out of the hall, past Olivia, past the cameras, past the wreckage. She laughed in Mason's arms, but I walked out of the room with his wife, and I didn't look back. The news broke before we even made it back to the car. By the time Natalie and I reached the valet stand outside MOPOP, phones were buzzing. Screens lit up with push notifications. Seattle developer Mason Reed arrested at charity gala. Breaking, SEC raids MOPOP event in white-collar sting. Exclusive, affair tied to real estate fraud exposed in public scandal. I didn't say a word. I just stood there beside Natalie, watching the city swirl around us. Olivia was still inside. I imagined her clutching her glass of wine with trembling hands, trying to find someone, anyone, to explain what had just happened. But there was no salvaging it. Not this time. Natalie slid into the passenger seat of the town car Barry had arranged. I followed and closed the door behind me. For the first few minutes, we sat in silence as the driver pulled away from the chaos. Then she laughed. Soft, restrained, but real. I looked over at her. That was dramatic, she said, shaking her head. I cracked a smile. You okay? She nodded. Better than I expected. Honestly, I thought I'd feel destroyed, but I just feel free. I understood exactly what she meant, because for the first time in months, maybe longer, I felt it too. Mason was booked within the hour. The charges were serious. Securities fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud. The federal kind of problems, not slap-on-the-wrist territory. Olivia tried calling me that night, 6 times. I didn't answer. The next day, she showed up at the condo. She knocked. I didn't open. I watched her through the peephole. Hair pulled back, dressed like she hadn't slept, clutching a canvas tote and looking like a woman who finally realized her safety net had been torched. After a few minutes, she slid a note under the door. No envelope, just folded paper. It said, I don't know what you've done, but I know you did it for a reason. I'm sorry. For everything. I loved you. Maybe I still do. Please don't hate me. I sat on the other side of the door, holding that note in my hands, reading it twice, then folding it again and setting it on the entryway table, right next to the spare keys I hadn't returned to her yet. I didn't hate her, but I couldn't save her either. The divorce moved fast. She didn't contest anything. She couldn't, not with what I had on file. The evidence Barry gathered was airtight. Financials, photos, witness accounts. Her name never appeared on Mason's business ledgers, but her face was plastered across every tabloid and morning news segment. Guilt by association is a powerful thing in this city. She lost her job within the week. Her employer issued a vague statement about ethical misalignments. She disappeared after that, vanished from her usual circles. I heard through a mutual friend that she moved back to Bainbridge Island to stay with her sister. I didn't ask which one. I signed the papers in silence. Left her with the bare minimum. She kept the furniture in the guest condo and one of the cars. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. I wanted clean air. And I got it. Mason pleaded guilty after a short plea deal. His lawyer tried to spin it, of course. Unintentional mismanagement. Pressures of the market, misguided ambition. But the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, followed by probation. He won't serve all of it, rich men rarely do, but his empire was finished. Bankruptcies filed, properties seized, partnerships terminated. Natalie divorced him before the sentencing. Quietly, gracefully, with the same steely composure she showed the night we walked out of the museum. She came out of it with more than I expected. Apparently, Mason had hidden more than mistresses. Offshore accounts, stashed investments, a second apartment in Vancouver. She found it all. I asked her once how she'd done it. She just smiled and said, when a man lies to his wife, he forgets how smart she used to be. A month later, I was sitting in a cafe on Capitol Hill when she called. Natalie. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce finalization. Not because we were avoiding each other, but because the storm had passed and left us both trying to rebuild. You busy? She asked. Not really, I said, even though I had 3 meetings that afternoon. I have an idea, something I think you'll want in on. She sent me an address. It wasn't a restaurant or an office. It was a storefront, closed for months, formerly a travel agency. When I arrived, she was already inside, dressed down in jeans and a flannel shirt, walking the length of the space like she was measuring it with her eyes. What is this? I asked. She looked at me serious. It's the beginning of something new. She reached into her tote and pulled out a folder. On the front, the Seattle Truth Project. What's this? I asked, flipping it open. A nonprofit for victims of financial deception, investment fraud, real estate scams, mismanaged retirement accounts. People like us. People who were collateral damage. I want to make something out of the mess. Something that helps. I studied the paperwork, mission statement, draft budget, partnership pitches, and then I saw it at the bottom of the document. Founders, Natalie Reed and Daniel Brooks. She looked at me. We don't have to do this together, but I'd like to, and I think you'd be good at it. I sat down on the windowsill, let the idea sink in. I spent 20 years helping rich people get richer, I said. You think I'm qualified to help victims? She shrugged. You know both sides now. That makes you dangerous in a good way. I looked around the empty space. Sunlight slanting in through dusty glass, floorboards creaking under old weight, the faint echo of what it could become. And for the first time since this entire thing started, I felt something rise in my chest that wasn't anger or shame or betrayal. I felt purpose. We launched 3 months later. The Seattle Truth Project, a nonprofit with legal resources, public workshops, investigative reporting, and advocacy programs. Small at first, a skeleton team, but it grew faster than we thought it would. There were so many people, retirees conned by brokers, new immigrants swindled by fake property listings, working-class families crushed by false investment groups. We gave them something we never had: information, power, a way forward. People started noticing. Local press, podcasts, the occasional think piece. The attention was never the goal, but it helped. Natalie and I became partners in more ways than one. It didn't happen fast. There was no big, sweeping romantic moment. No candlelit dinner with swelling music. Just time, proximity, shared battle scars. One night, months later, we were cleaning up after an event. Folding chairs, taking down banners, when she stopped in the middle of the room and looked at me. You ever think about how weird this all is? She said. I laughed. Which part? The betrayal? The public meltdown? Or the fact that I now know how to operate a popcorn machine? She smiled, but it faded a little. I mean this, you and me. We were supposed to hate each other. I nodded. And yet here we are. She walked over and rested her arm against mine. You don't have to be alone in the next chapter, Daniel. Not if you don't want to be. I looked at her, really looked at her, the resilience, the quiet fire, the woman who'd walked through her own ruin and came out holding a blueprint for something better. And for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Olivia, or what I'd lost, or who I used to be. I was just present. I don't want to be alone, I said. That's the thing about stories like this. They never start where you think they do, not at the moment of betrayal or the discovery or the confrontation. And they don't end with revenge or justice either. They end somewhere quiet, somewhere after the dust settles, after the people who betrayed you fade from relevance, after you rebuild. And if you're lucky, really lucky, they end with someone else beside you, helping you carry the weight you never thought you could lift again. It's been just over a year now, 12 months since the message. 11 since Mason was arrested. 9 since Olivia walked out of my life, taking nothing but a suitcase and the ghost of who she used to be. In that time, the world kept spinning, and so did I. Not out of control, not into despair, but into something else. Something I hadn't expected. Peace. They don't tell you this when everything falls apart, that there's a version of your life on the other side of the wreckage. A version that isn't better or worse, just yours again. And that might be the most valuable thing I got back. I saw Olivia once after the divorce. A random afternoon. I was walking out of a bakery on First Avenue, picking up muffins for a Truth Project donor meeting. She was on the other side of the street, holding a coffee and walking fast, her head low beneath a beanie. Alone. She looked older. Not in a cruel way, just weathered. Like life had finally caught up to her. She saw me. We locked eyes for maybe 3 seconds. Then she looked away, turned the corner, and was gone. I stood there a moment longer, watching the space where she'd been. But I didn't feel anger, or pain, or even satisfaction. I felt nothing. And that nothing was its own kind of freedom. The Seattle Truth Project kept growing. We added legal counselors, partnered with a local university, ran workshops for small businesses and retirees on how to spot predatory contracts. We even helped uncover a Ponzi scheme hiding behind a green investment startup. I spoke at a panel once, in front of 200 people, on what it feels like to realize your partner has a secret life. My hands shook the entire time. I'd never told the full story out loud, not to that many people. Afterward, a man came up to me, late 50s, suit jacket too big at the shoulders. He said, "Thank you. You said things I've never been able to say. My wife. She cleaned out my accounts last March. I thought I was the only idiot who didn't see it coming." I told him he wasn't. And for the first time, I believed that applied to me too. Natalie became a constant in my life. Not a savior. Not a rebound. Just a steady presence. We didn't rush things. We didn't label it too fast. We didn't need to. Some evenings, we'd stay late at the office, half working, half talking. One night, she looked at me across the conference table and said, "Isn't it funny how we were both just side characters in their stories? Until we stopped being." I knew what she meant. I wasn't Daniel, Olivia's husband, anymore. I wasn't a placeholder in someone else's fantasy. I was me, with bruises, yes, but standing. And in Natalie, I found someone who didn't flinch at the broken parts. She just saw them for what they were. Proof I'd survived. We weren't perfect. We argued sometimes about logistics, about burnout, about the right tone to use in a press release. But there was no deception, no secrets, and that, I've learned, is everything. One evening, rainy, naturally, because this is still Seattle, we stood by the window watching droplets race down the glass. I asked her what she thought it all meant. The affair, the collapse, the entire chain reaction that had ripped our lives open. She took a while to answer. Then she said, "Maybe it had to happen, not because we deserved it, but because we needed to remember who we are." I thought about that for a long time, because I think she's right. I visited my parents more. I'd neglected them in the before times, the Olivia era. My mother cried the first time I called just to check in. Said I sounded lighter. "I haven't heard you sound like this since college," she said. "Before all the suit and tie stuff swallowed you up." She wasn't wrong. The suit still fits, but I don't wear it like armor anymore. I even picked up painting again, something I gave up a decade ago when work took over. Turns out, being alone in a room with a canvas and nothing but silence is incredibly therapeutic. It's messy, unforgiving, honest, a lot like healing. The first piece I finished was abstract, reds and grays and one sliver of gold through the middle. I called it Fracture. Natalie bought it at our charity auction without blinking. "It's a damn good painting," she said with a wink. I told her it wasn't worth what she paid. She replied, "Then I got a bargain." Barry and I stayed in touch too. He still worked cases, fewer now, and only the ones that mattered. We grabbed lunch every so often. Talked about people, not surveillance. He told me once, "You were one of the clean ones. Most people want revenge. You just wanted the truth." That meant more to me than I expected. I never wanted blood. I never wanted to hurt Olivia. I just wanted to stop being a fool in my own life. And that's what I tell people when they ask me what to do. When they show up at our office with folders full of emails or screensh asterisk TS or bank statements, I tell them, don't start with vengeance. Start with clarity. You have to know before you can act. And when you act, act with dignity. That's what they can't fake. That's what they don't expect. Some listen. Some cry. Some storm out, not ready yet. But the ones who stay, they change. Slowly, quietly, and permanently, just like I did. A few months ago, I was asked to write a short piece for a local publication. Something about betrayal, resilience, and what comes next. I spent hours trying to find the perfect way to explain it. This is what I wrote. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It breaks the version of yourself that believed you were safe. That's the hardest part. Rebuilding that self. But if you let the truth hollow out what needs to go, you'll find something sharper underneath. Not bitterness. Not distrust. Just clarity. And in that clarity, you build a new life. one they can't touch. They ran it as is. No edits. And the feedback was overwhelming. People emailed. Strangers stopped me on the street. A few asked if we could start a podcast. We haven't, yet. But what stuck with me most was one message from a woman in Kansas. She said, "I read your piece with tears in my eyes. I thought I was going crazy. Turns out I was just waking up. I saved that one, because I know exactly what it feels like to wake up in the wreckage and realize you still have breath in your lungs. I won't romanticize any of it. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dignified, not always. There were nights I drank too much, days I couldn't get out of bed, weeks where I second-guessed every moment of our marriage, wondering how blind I really was. But I came out the other side. And what I know now is this: closure doesn't come when they apologize. It doesn't come in the courtroom or in the headlines or even in their downfall. It comes quietly, when you wake up one morning and realize the pain isn't the loudest voice in the room. When you look at someone new, not as a way to forget, but as a way to begin again. When you tell your story, and someone else says, "Me too." And when you finally stop waiting for the old life to come back. Because it won't. But the new one? It just might be better. Olivia sent one last message. "I hope you're happy now." I didn't reply. Happiness didn't come from exposing her or watching Mason fall. It came later, in quiet mornings, in the steady hum of purpose. The world didn't collapse when she left. It opened. Natalie and I didn't rush into labels, but something real was growing. Not built on secrets, but truth. And in that, I finally found peace. At the Truth Project's first anniversary, I looked around the room. Survivors, fighters, people standing tall after being shattered. I gave a short speech, thanked everyone, and afterward, someone asked if I'd go back and change anything. I paused, then said, "No." Pain made me honest. Olivia became a chapter, not the story. And Natalie? She became the one who helped me write the next one.